Hello, everyone. I'm Clay Stelzer, and just real quick, I want to give you some context as to who I am and why I'm the guy here talking about what it means to be open and honest. So I run a company called 1560, and simply said, I help leaders transform their lives and their businesses. And I wake up every morning and I'm just so excited to help them do that. And I would imagine many of you have some exposure to executive coaches or team coaches, which is what I am, what we do. And but we're a little bit different for a few reasons. Most executive coaches are really valuable by helping a leader develop some strategy to overcome an obstacle. Like, pretty straightforward, pretty simple, really valuable. I enjoy doing that, but what I enjoy doing most is helping leaders understand how they got to the challenge in the first place. How did you get here? What's the pattern you're running, likely unaware you're running, that is leading you exactly to the results you're experiencing? Because if you can wake up to those patterns, now you have an opportunity to fundamentally transform how you're showing up in the world, in your organization, with the people around you. And that is just, I've transformed my own life using some of the principles I'm going to share with you today, plus a lot of other principles that we call conscious leadership, which is what Leah was alluding to. We're going to talk about one of my very favorite topics today, which is this idea of being open and honest. And it's one of the reasons why I spend most of my time these days. I would imagine 75% of my time is spent working with clients on EOS, and it seems like we're all familiar with what that means and what that is. One of the reasons I love EOS is because everyone in the community knows that it's so critical to be open and honest. It's one of the fundamentals. And I don't know about you, but I've never seen or heard someone wake up in the morning and just simply say, I'm just not open, or I'm just not interested in being open and honest. Like, I think we all want to be open and honest, but there's something in the way. It's not so easy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about why it is that we're not open and honest, even though everyone clearly sees the value in it. And then I'm going to introduce some frameworks and what I call the 4 conditions required to fundamentally shift a culture more open and honest. It's a little bit of a different conversation. I'm not just going to give you a tool. Here's the way you can structure hard conversations. There's some value in that, but I think what's most important, I think the conversation that's most important around this topic is helping people first understand what's in the way. One last thing. I'm about to share some slides and take all the notes you want to take, but also know that at the end of our session, I'm going to put up a QR code. You'll be able to just basically scan it with your QR code like you're ordering a burger at a bar or something, and then you type in your name, your email address, you'll have the slide deck sent immediately to you. So you're going to get everything you're about to see. Okay, here, I have the great luxury of working with lots and lots of organizations and leaders and teams. Here are the things I see quite regularly. People are not open and honest because I don't want to lose my job or not get a raise. I might be wrong. I hate conflict. I don't want to be seen as a pain. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. It won't make a difference if I speak up anyway, blah, 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 blah. These are the typical kinds of things I hear all the time. And yeah, this all makes sense to me, why someone would say any one of these 6 things. Are you all, I see some heads nodding. Are you all able to relate to these statements here? Leslie, I'm going to add another one here for I don't know how. I love that, actually, that's part of it for you. Yeah. So any reactions to what you're seeing up here? Pretty consistent. Yeah, Leah, sorry.
Yeah, I might jump in because we see across so many of our agency clients that there's a little bit of all of these, and so then we see this split that they will talk kind of behind the scenes, to one of their, closer friends, or closer confidants, in their departments. And then the only time that we may hear about it at a leadership level is at an annual performance review, at a quarterly check-in, a really formal setting where we are asking them specific questions to kind of generate hey, we really do want to hear your voice. And it goes back to, what Leslie said, is it's the how more often than not, is that they do want to say it. Yes, there might be a little fear around it, but they're not quite sure how to do it. And so when we do open up like the avenue for them, like a formal, meeting, they're like, oh, okay, this makes sense to do it here, so I can do it there, versus like just bringing it up when they have the thought, right?
Yeah.
Just reaching out and saying, hey, I need to talk. Like they don't do that proactively.
Yeah.
It's very much like when they are asked, they're almost more than happy to share, but it's only when asked. And it's so tough because you're just like, well, why didn't you tell me this before? Why didn't you speak up, earlier? It's like it just does not occur to a lot of agency team members. And then I mentioned in the chat as well is that we also hear, and it breaks my heart, is that last one. Is like, well, I didn't speak up because it's not going to make a difference. We're like, yes, it will. Oh my gosh, you have no idea, but they obviously don't see it that way until there's enough examples that show when someone speaks up, this changes. When someone speaks up, this changes, and it sticks.
Yes.
So yeah, a lot of these, like, nodding my head and going, oh, so tough to see them, but it's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you're saying about when we create some positive reinforcement, well, then that can actually change things. And you're going to see that come in the latter half of the presentation as to one of the sub conditions really required for pushing through the fear or the lack of, sometimes I don't know how, there's still fear underneath that, because really what we're saying is, I don't want to do it wrong. Or if I do it incorrectly, there will be a consequence. Yeah, so we're going to kind of dig underneath the I don't know how piece as we continue here. Here's what I see leaders say as to what's in the way of them being open and honest. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to be seen as, or I want to be seen as a positive leader. Good leaders let their teams speak up first. I don't want people to leave. I hate conflict. That's kind of similar with the other one. And it's easier if I just deal with it myself. I hear these things all the time. Is this fairly consistent? I'm some more heads nodding. Anything strange here? Any other reactions to this?
I can relate to this. I think I don't want my people to leave is actually the one I relate to most. And
Yeah.
it's like I don't know. For me, there is a sense that that the uncertainty of business behind the scenes can really be, honestly, in some cases, more than a team should have to handle. Like, it's one thing from I'm the entrepreneur, I'm the business owner taking the risk, but an employee is there for a job and they want a certain level of stability. And if I give them too much of the ups and downs, I mean, I give a lot, but like if it's too much of that it wouldn't feel secure enough for somebody to, be comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'd be instead asking them to sort of just trust me that I will take care of them versus trusting like the institution of the business to take care of them, which is where I would rather it sit.
Yeah, got it. Makes sense to me. So let's start digging in. So now we know sort of why we are who we are and just exactly why we're sharing the amount that we're sharing. What's the common thread? I mean, I've already kind of shared about this. So even Kristen, what you just said here, if I was to go a couple levels deeper here, I'm just going to give you the answer to the question here. Here's the deal, everyone. Like, we're scared. There's a potential consequence, or at least I'm believing that if I'm more, thing will happen that I don't want to have happen. Like, and again, that can show up as what Leslie was talking. I don't know how to do it. Okay, you might not know how to do it, but what's the fear of doing it wrong? What's the implication of not knowing how to do it? It all, in my experience, working with teams for many years, we're scared. There's a consequence. So let's understand that a little bit in some more depth. Human beings are designed to avoid anything that's going to put us in harm's way. It's how we've survived as a species for as long as we've survived. So our brains, I'm not going to get into too much science here, but before we even have a chance to think creatively or logically, our lizard brain, our amygdala, and the part of our brain responsible for just simply like fight, flight, faint, freeze, we're constantly looking out for threats to our security, our approval, and our control. And anytime we are believing, even subconsciously, that 1, 2, or 3 of these things is threatened, we behave or we react in a way to preserve our safety. Okay, so this is what that means: security. I'm not going to do anything or say anything that I believe is going to affect my ability to pay my rent, my mortgage, have food on the table, be able to take care of my family. Am I going to get a raise? Am I going to get the promotion? Am I still going to have a job? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things basically come down to, am I going to be able to take care of myself and the people that I love around me? And I'm not going to do anything that's going to sacrifice that. Okay. This is just basic survival strategy. The second thing is approval. We like to be liked. Human beings are social beings. We cannot be alone because we die. We can't hunt and gather and do everything we need to do simply as animals. So as soon as we believe that that person's going to think I'm a bad leader, I'm rude, I'm not smart enough, I'm not logical enough, I don't see the world a certain way that I should be seeing, like as soon as we believe that someone's going to disapprove of us in some way, we react. And so we'll avoid saying things that we think are going to break approval, et cetera, et cetera. And the last one is control. Human beings don't like control. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like curveballs. We just don't like it. And so we want to do everything we can to ensure we have a say as to what's happening to us and what's happening to the world around us. And we're not going to do anything that will lead us to more uncertainty. Okay? I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm curious to get your reaction hearing these 3 things. Now, again, think about all the reasons why you're not being more open and honest and why your team's not being open and honest. I guarantee you, and this is where the coaching is going to come in, we'll be able to connect anything you've said so far to 1, 2, or 3 of these threats. This is your brain doing its job.
Yeah, so one of the things, this really helped me understand something, because like in my corporate career, like in a large organization, I would say the thing that nobody else wanted to say or talk, raise the hand in the big meetings. And I'm like, well, what? Nobody wants to talk about it, but I would say it. And I was like, why was I not afraid of my job? Because I probably should have been at some point. But it was because and I realized like, oh, I had some executive sponsorship. Like there was I knew that I probably wouldn't, the probability was low. And that's the reason, because otherwise I should have probably been afraid. And because I look back on it multiple times and I'm like, I wouldn't have said that thing. Like I probably shouldn't have said, I can't believe I said that thing. But it was, it was like, hey, let's talk about the elephant in the room, because then nobody's talking about the thing. Like so no, this was the security piece of it, because I know, it's the brain. That's what we measure. We measure like this, emotional data and gather limbic system responses. Yeah. And that really helped me. So thanks. Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah. So you're the executive in the room, but the middle management team or, the director level folks, like, unless there's a really good reason to speak up, why would I risk it? Like the benefits have to be incredibly clear to me to overcome the fear. That's how people make decisions. Is the cost worth the risk? Yeah. I'm curious, what else, who else here has an observation, a question, a thought about these 3 words?
I think for me, what came to mind is control. And in the context of when I'm working with a client or having when my wife and I are doing a business meeting, it's control over myself. It's self-control. If I share too much or if I think about something or suggest something, will I be able to maintain control of the thoughts in my head? Like not an external control, or will I lose my temper or will that, but suddenly I'm thinking about other things instead of listening, instead of being active, and it's actually preventing me from doing the thing. There's a kind of self-perpetuating cycle there, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah. Can anyone not see themselves in these 3 words? Like, I've never had a fear of losing security, approval, or control. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Because each of us every day makes decisions, usually reactive decisions based on these 3 things. And once we start seeing what, it's kind of like you can't unsee this slide. My sense is if you take this seriously, if you're at least curious about it, you'll start seeing how people are making decisions, yourself included, based on what it means to be a human being. And that's the rest of our time together is going to be playing with that. So,
Well, and Clay,
yeah.
just a quick question for you as a coach, and since you've been through this with so many leaders in also different industries as well, not just in the agency space, I'm curious because I think in obviously frameworks and spreadsheets and in a very linear method, and so when I saw this, I really went to, yeah, people start like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like people need to have that security first. That is like internal first, then it's the external with approval, and then it's like the higher higher level of self-control, kind of like what Leslie was talking about. And I'm curious from your perspective if there is like that framework that people go through, maybe more subconsciously. Maybe this is also a question for Robert, based off of all the work you guys do with this, or am I reading it the way that I like to read things, which is in a list? I'm just curious if you've seen any patterns or trends with how people go through, these particular topics.
I want to make sure. Here are the thoughts that come up hearing the question. So there is some hierarchy even in these three words. I mean, like all roads lead to security, because if I don't have your approval, well, then that means maybe I don't get my job. So like Maslow, or I won't keep my job. So Maslow's, security, like the fundamentals of living, are at the bottom, the base. I see that as being consistent with this. And at the top of Maslow's, like this idea of self-actualization. Well, you can't, the pyramid, you can't level up if you're feeling insecure with anything lower. So if I don't feel secure in my job, then I'm unwilling to, climb the ladder to this self-actualization. I think where this stuff gets really interesting is we do have an opportunity to recognize, we can get a little Eastern thought here, but like in this moment, nothing is lacking. Like self-actualization and like this idea of climbing Maslow's pyramid, we can begin to see that whatever I'm fearing actually isn't something that my body is reacting well out of proportion with what's true in the world. And so I can get into a very long discussion, and I'm not sure I'm even answering your question. But this is very consistent with anything you've ever read about Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. Yeah.
Well, and also it's really interesting to me because Leah, you were talking about like across the research and across the strata, especially B2B. So we'll test one of the, so we concept test is, not creative message testing. And some of the reasons, like it's higher than you would think, and that we would think, or at least that I would think, I was biased, but the reasons why people buy and make behavioral economics decisions are more often than I thought, and we see it quite a bit and we test it quite a bit, is to make me look good to my boss. They would never say that in qual surveys, but we test that concept across. Yeah. And because it was right to what you were just talking about, Clay. It was this hierarchy of needs to make me feel good to my boss. I'm more solid in my foundation, more secure, so I can go to and build this foundation. And it's wild because we test it and it's like, well, it's a weird concept to test, but it crushes it. And if you're selling B2B and other, like that's a thing that you gotta consider. Like whatever your role in, if your economic buyer is not at the highest part, or and sometimes if you're the boss and the CEO and run it, you're quote unquote, you report to like a whole group of people, and it makes me look good, and so whoever's buying it, there's always a group of constituents you have, so it's that security, like Clay said.
Yeah.
Nice, thank you both.
So I want to get into I'm excited to get into some actual coaching. Let's play with some real material here. Let's put the framework to test. That's fun. But before we do that, well, I just want to given what we just shared, like, of course, we're not being open and honest. Like, that's kind of the punchline of this show today, this topic. Like, we're not designed to be open and honest as human beings. Okay. So we've got biology going against us. So in my mind, and all the work I've doing in my own personal professional development, it requires intention. We let biology just do its course. If we're letting inertia do its thing, we're just not going to be open and honest. It's just not going to happen. So what I see quite regularly based on that are three. There's lots of different scenarios, but here are the big ones. One, we just simply don't speak up. That's what we talked about. Or I see this a lot. We do speak up, but we're not really open and honest. We'll like speak up enough to get credit, but we're not really saying the thing that needs to be said or that's on our mind. Or some of us strong-minded folks will speak up, be incredibly open and honest, and then try to convince everyone that we're right about whatever it is that we're being open and honest about. And that creates a whole other level of drama. And I've got another workshop around that. Like that's a whole other thing. But like this is just another way in which we deal with this subject as human beings. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to stop sharing my camera. I would love for all of you to think about a business relationship that you're in that feels difficult. Maybe it's someone on your teams, a partner, maybe it's a client, someone above you, someone below you, it doesn't really matter. But I want you to just bring them to mind, and I want you to think about, what's so hard about that relationship. And I would love for one brave soul here to be willing to share a little bit about that relationship. And I want to put some of these frameworks to the test. What haven't you shared with this person? What aren't you communicating?
I haven't shared with him like, hey, it seems like you've changed, and because and then also I know that he experienced the loss of a parent like not too long ago, and so I'm like, I want to give as much grace as someone who's going through some things, but like that, those are the part. I'm like, I heard in some of this, I haven't known what to say, and I haven't shared very much about like we're talking, we talk around some things, but I haven't also had an opportunity. We haven't had a conversation since it's gotten a little, our last one, and it was like, oh, this is kind of weird. Yeah.
Got it. So, and my guess is you haven't shared that it feels weird to be in a relationship with him currently.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. I have not.
Yeah, got it. And like, yeah, of course. Like, oh my gosh, he had a death in the family.
Yeah.
I don't want to be too much. I don't want to step where I'm not invited. Yeah. And now it's weird. So I don't necessarily believe that you should say or shouldn't say anything to this person, but what I want to do is look at what are the benefits and costs of not sharing all of what you do have to share. Okay. So if we're to use our model, what's in the way of you sharing with him, hey, our relationship feels weird now. I feel bad that you had a death in the family. I'm not sure how to be with that. Like, why haven't you been just more transparent with me? If we're to use our model, is it because you may feel some threat to your security, to your approval, or to your control?
Maybe approval, but I don't want to jeopardize it. We've consistently had a great relationship in the past.
Yeah.
And then I just noticed like he's been different on LinkedIn and different. I'm like, I don't know, like what changes? Is this stress manifesting? And so I haven't known what to assign it. And so I don't want to be like the normal human and just assign it all to negatives. I want to be open and to that.
But what I'm also hearing is I don't want to jeopardize it.
Yep. I don't want to jeopardize a relationship because I really deeply care about the people that we build long-term relationships, and I don't like messing that up.
And what happened if you messed it up? What would be the impact?
Well, interesting. And it's like, well, I mean, we just wouldn't work together, but which doesn't seem like. But for me, I'm like, no, we build relationships with good people, so it'd be a loss of like somebody, a relationship and time spent with really good people in and around and doing work with.
Yeah.
And so it would almost be like the loss of a colleague that you really like, except it's a partnership. So
there's at a basic, that makes sense to me. At a basic level, if I were to speak up, there's a possibility that I will lose the relationship. And I work hard to build these relationships. Yeah. So I think there's actually a little bit of security, control, and approval in all of it. Let's start with approval. I don't know. I don't want to put this person in a box, because if I put them in the wrong box, what will they think of me? I'm guessing. Maybe this person won't appreciate me sharing whatever it is that you may share.
Yeah.
Approval. And if they're not going to approve of me, what does that mean for our business partnership? Security, potentially. And doesn't feel like you have much control over the health of that relationship. control. So it seems like there may be a little bit of each of those three sprinkled in. And so what you're doing is you're playing it safe. I'm just not going to share because I don't know what's going to happen if I do share.
Mhm.
Great. So what are all the benefits you're getting for not being more open and honest? What are you getting for staying the course?
Right,
Because you
like,
want,
status quo is what we're getting, and that's what
yeah,
we're getting. That's the only, but that,
right. There are benefits. If there weren't, we would be more open and honest. Like,
yeah,
I'm guessing here, like, the benefits are, well, at least I have some sense that if I don't screw up the relationship, it's going to maintain, and that's better than losing it.
yeah.
So I have some sense of security in the relationship. That's a benefit.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. That would make me not share so much. Now, Robert, what's the risk? What's the cost you're paying by not sharing?
So the cost of sharing is a path toward like disconnection, and so that's where, and so I acknowledge that, and that's just, it's renting a little space in my head, not tons, but a little bit.
Yeah, right. So it's an energy leak. There's something
Yeah.
here, and I call it an energy leak. I don't feel whole in that relationship. And when we feel that, we usually tend to disconnect in some way. We pull away. Now, here's the irony about us silly human beings. All of us have this issue. We don't speak up to preserve our approval, and then oftentimes we end up screwing up our approval by staying silent because we disconnect. When we disconnect and aren't speaking up and aren't in relationship, sometimes can think, oh, maybe they're not the partner I thought they were. Oftentimes we manifest the very thing we're trying to avoid. I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, but it happens quite regularly in these sorts of situations. So Robert, you make sense to me. You're a human being that does what human beings do. There's a potential risk if I were to speak up, even if that is me speaking up saying, hey, I care about you and I know that there's something going on in your life. I'm getting benefit from staying the course, and that's outweighing the risk I have of potentially creating some separation. Now, in my experience, people are motivated to create change in their lives when the costs begin to outweigh the benefits. And part of what I do is help people see the costs more often. And I help them see that the story they're telling themselves about what will happen oftentimes isn't the case. Like I just imagine Robert saying, I don't know who this person's name is, like, hey, Jim, we haven't talked in a while. I know you've had some stuff going on in your personal life. I just really value our relationship, and I just wanted to check in. And if there's anything I can do, I just want you to know that I value our partnership. Like, I know I just made that up, but like, can't imagine anyone not appreciating some version of that.
No, I appreciate it. That's good, because I'm like, well, okay, I'm like going after this. After this, I'm gonna email him and do a version of that. Basically.
Yeah,
So,
beautiful. That's my last question. So it's like, this is again the human experience. Once we turn the lights on and we see what we're doing, we see how we're reacting from unconscious fear. We don't want to beat ourselves up for it. In fact, we want to do the opposite. We want to just offer ourselves a breath of acceptance, like, oh my gosh, look at what I've done with the lights off. I've separated myself because I'm just scared of hurting the relationship. That makes good sense. So I don't want to beat myself up. I'm going to offer myself a breath of acceptance for that. And with the acceptance, with the awareness, now I'm at choice. So what do I want to do? And I've already heard that you have more willingness now to make a choice that I think may actually bring more closeness in your relationship.
cool. Appreciate that.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thanks.
You're welcome. Of course. So yeah, see how this stuff kind of works, like security control. It's just human. We're going against our biology here. I'd love any comments, feedback, questions about what you just saw, about the questions I asked, anything that's on your mind. I'd love to just have a conversation about that.
I liked that the resolution that you offered. I think it didn't dictate a specific outcome, right? So Robert doesn't have to make Jim feel a certain way or elicit anything specific. It's just kind of, Jim could just be like, thanks. And and that could be the end of it, but it's about what he's able to do.
Yeah.
Robert, I don't mean to talk about you like you're not here.
No, I appreciate it. I'm here for it. It was really, this was helpful because I'm like, normally I kind of feel like I know how to solve this stuff, but or I should know, and I'm beating myself up because I don't know this kind of thing, and it's just really helpful. So I like Leslie was saying, I was like, no, I really like being coached. Like I like that piece, and because I've seen how I've seen how it's helped other people get unstuck. It's helped me, and so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I probably took, what Kristen's pointing at is the way in which I chose to be open and honest with my example is a little bit different than what people typically do. And we're going to talk about the method of doing that. Basically, it's just simply revealing yourself, sharing about you. It actually has more about you than it has about him. Hey, I noticed I'm pulling out a relationship. I got maybe a little nervous. I don't know what's going on in your personal life. And I just want you to know that I care. I care about our partnership. That's got nothing to do with him. That's only about you. And in my experience, when we just share about us, we can 9.8 per 9, I don't know, I'm trying to say 9 out of 10 times, what's it called, 9 out of 10 times, it works out really well. And I got to tell you that 1 out of 10 times, if you're leading with compassion and care and someone has a bad reaction, well, that's good data to have. Like, is this someone I want to be in a relationship with that isn't willing to just simply receive my care? I don't know. Yeah. So what I want to do though is I want to get into the so what do you do? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to talk about some of those topics. But here's the first thing before we get into specific details. Here's what you don't need. You don't need another book about how to have hard conversations. Like, Leslie, you've got lots of books. I can see them. I've got plenty of books. There's brilliant books on this conversation, crucial conversations. Like, there's a zillion of them, and they're great. The problem is that it's not that we don't have the tool, it's that we're not willing to move through our fear. That's the problem. And that's why this conversation, I think, is a little bit different than the typical conversation. I'm going to actually give you some technique here, but I don't think the technique it's a waste of time if you're not willing to be with your fear in a different way. That's what makes this whole thing different. That's what makes this whole thing work. Okay? So, the question I have for you is, are you willing to commit to establishing the conditions necessary for you and your teams to navigate the fear skillfully? That's where I like focusing people's attention. You're going to get more, you'll see a bigger impact rather than studying some tool on how to communicate. Yeah. So let's talk about what that means. I believe there's 4 conditions, at least I believe there's 4 conditions for establishing an open and honest culture, and we're going to unpack each of these 4. But here they are. First and foremost, and I'm speaking to leaders. So as the leader, well, I will tell you now, if the person at the very top of the team or organization isn't willing to play ball, good luck trying to get anyone underneath that person to speak up openly and honestly. It ain't going to happen. Too scary, too much risk. So the leader, if you really want to shift your culture in an organization, the leader needs to take a stand for being open and honest. Once they do that, they got to model the behavior. They got to go first. Then they need to some time for people to begin practicing by introducing some rituals, some new ways of communicating with one another on a regular basis. Like learning anything new, it requires repetition. Build habit. And lastly, you got to hold folks accountable with care. This doesn't mean being a jerk, but it does mean standing up for the values that are important to you and your organization that you're leading. Okay, so let's talk about this first one. Take a stand for the culture you want. So you got to hold this front and center every day if you're really wanting to move the needle. Now, we've talked about EOS. Well, EOS, they have this thing, the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, and one part of this is what they call core values. Some of you are deeply or intimately familiar with this. Doesn't matter to me if you're on EOS, doesn't matter to me even if you are on EOS, if you call open and honest a core value, but you have to hold this idea of being open and honest equally as important as a core value. It can't be we'll do it if we feel like it. It's got to be at the top of your priorities. Just has to be. And there's a lot of ways in which you can then introduce this to your team. This is me sharing. I'm going to share like basically a short script as to how you might introduce this to the folks. I'm not encouraging you, if you can pick up this language, but make it your own. But something along the lines of, hey, everyone, hey, team, we care enough about each other and our business that being open and honest can't be negotiable. We know that if we're not being open and honest, we're leaving our relationships, personal fulfillment, professional growth, and business success on the table. And I believe that to be true. To make this work, we hold curiosity and learning as the most important and leave proving we're right at the door. And we know being open and honest can be hard at times. We just learned that the first half of our presentation. And we're committed to supporting one another to live up to this core value, to support each other to work through that fear. Some version of this, I think, is necessary to let the team know, here's the game we're playing. We're playing this game because it's really important to each of us individually and collectively. Any thoughts or comments on this? Observations?
I've not used these 4 statements specifically, but I can attest that when you invite people to take this type of stance, it can really work. It'll quickly, like surprisingly, within minutes, it can really kind of separate out who is at what level and are they prepared. Not in terms of who should you let go, like not a dramatic reaction. You had such a great way of phrasing it. Who will you need to hold accountable with care and compassion? Like when you confront this directly.
Yeah.
I love it. Especially the word curiosity and learning. That's a phrase I've seen have a lot of impact very quickly because it reframes the security question. That's the note that I wrote in what I've learned from you today. Is like, oh, if this is a security issue, when we say curiosity and learning, it helps reframe. This is not security, but it's an invitation to do this instead.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Leslie. Yeah. So there's some version of this we introduced to folks. And now you as the leaders need to model the behavior. It doesn't work if you just introduce the big idea. And so, Leslie, I imagine in Focus Day, from what I understand, most implementers ask this question. Are you willing to be your best? And I think it's a great question. And I think there's a second question or a reframe of this question that's equally as important, or even more important around this topic, maybe even more important. For me, the question is, are you willing to be with your fear? Because the only thing that's keeping you from being your best is your fear. So this just takes it a level deeper. Are you willing to be courageous enough to say something even though it's scary because you care about the co-committed relationship you have around openness and honesty? Yeah. Leaders have to go first. I'm telling you, it should be quite obvious. Security, control, and approval. It's too scary. There's too much at risk. If I don't see that the person that is my boss is not only playing the game themselves, but encouraging me and celebrating me, pushing through my fear, it's a tough battle. It just is. So, as a leader, here's the simplest piece of homework I can give you. Say one scary thing every day. This can look like lots of different things. It can come in different formats. My wife and I are committed to openness and honesty. We have a spoken rule that if we each have something scary to say, we say it within 24 hours. It's said. And there's always something we could be saying. But you want to do this with someone else that's playing the game, someone else that's committed to being in this kind of relationship, which is why step 1, the first condition of establishing the culture, is critical. Once people understand why you're going to do it, then you just reinforce by saying a scary thing every day. Now, here is the tool that I'm going to introduce to you that I use in my own life. I've been using this for over a decade. It's my approach to speaking openly and honestly. This is kind of the example. I used this when I was coaching Robert. And so anyone have a guess as to what I mean by speaking unarguably? Does that mean something to you? Well, good. You're going to learn something then. I'm going to tell you what it means. Here's what it means. It's sharing your thoughts, your feelings, your wants, simply as what you're experiencing. So if I'm telling you, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling, here's what I'm wanting, nothing about that is arguable. Versus, you're not doing a good job. That's pretty arguable. I'm having the thought that you're missing expectations. That's not arguable. It is, I'm having the thought. Little tweaks like that make a massive difference as to how a message is received. So most people say, you know, you're an asshole. You're not doing your job well enough. I don't like going at people, believing their thoughts, proving to everyone that you're right. That's the stance most people take, especially when we're scared. That doesn't work very well. That creates disconnection in a relationship, and it keeps people from speaking up. So we're going to talk about how to begin speaking unarguably as a means to be more open and honest. First and foremost, before you say anything, the reason why we're going to be open and honest is what those 4 sentences said a few slides back. Like, you set up the conversation and let the other person know you care. Here's why I'm about to say something to you. Like, John, I want to clear something with you. I care about our relationship and our commitment to being open and honest. So I want to share with you what's on my mind and not disconnect. Like, oh my gosh, well, thank you. Someone cares enough about my relationship to take a risk with me. Or like, if we set up and affirm the relationship first, it settles our nervous system. It makes whatever is about to be said much more easy to receive when you know that the other person actually cares about you or cares about the relationship. And then what we do is we lay out the facts, the thoughts that we're having, our feelings, and our wants. Now, let's talk about that. What is a fact? I'm not going to give you the answer to this one. What's a fact?
Something verifiable.
Yeah, thanks. Information or events that are irrefutable. This is data that a video camera could have captured, right? Like in our leadership meeting earlier today, you were on your phone for 15 minutes. A video camera could have documented that, and you didn't contribute any thoughts or discussion. You didn't speak up. What's a fact about me? What are some facts about me?
You wear
You
glasses.
own some books. Yeah.
I wear glasses. That's a fact. They're right here. What was that, Robert?
You own some books, I think.
Well, owning them actually is arguable because maybe I'm borrowing or renting those.
Very good. You're in a you're definitely on screen with some books.
Yeah, I'm on screen with books. That is a fact.
Yeah.
But my relationship to those books, you inferred. That's what a thought is. This is what we do. We make up shit and we believe our thoughts, and then we tell people this is what's true, and it's oftentimes not true. So a thought is the interpretations of the facts that may or may not be true, stories that we create that give facts meaning. This is how human beings operate. Again, it's a survival strategy. We make meaning of what's going on around us so we can feel safe and in control. So I have a thought that you're disengaged, not prioritizing what's most important. Like, that's what someone may be thinking about this person being late and not contributing. But I don't know, maybe this person's on their phone because their kid just went home from school, like fell off the monkey bars and broke their leg or something. I don't know. Who knows what happened? But maybe they really want to be engaged and they're really upset that they can't be. We don't know. But if we share it as a thought, I'm having the thought that you are X, Y, and Z, we're not going to get into a fight. And there's opportunity for us to check out our story to see what truth is there. Okay. We can also share our feelings, like, hey, I'm angry. There's sadness here, fear, joy, there's lots of, and body sensations. If it's relevant, you can share that. Like, hey, I feel really angry about this. I'm tense. My shoulders are tight when I think about this. And what I'm wanting, and a want is just simply an uninhibited desire that can be expressed via a statement or a request. It's just a desire. What I'm wanting is for you to be more present and engaged in our meetings. So if I was to share this, hey, the facts are that you didn't contribute, you didn't speak up today, and I've got the thought that you're disengaged, and I'm angry about that. I'm wanting you to contribute more. And I don't know if any of that's true, but I want you to know what's going on over here on planet Clay. Any truth to that? Can we, now we can say, I'd like to check out my story. Is there anything here around that we can discuss? Rather than, hey, you're disengaged, get your head out of your ass, whatever else, which is what most people tell each other, some version of that. It's received very, very differently. So we make it about ourselves. Any thoughts or reactions to this?
I'll just jump in that I so appreciate the example of how it just rolled off your tongue, because I know particularly for like my ops team that they will just gobble this up. They will absolutely just so adore, the structure of it, and then what we've seen is they may stick too close to this and like write it all out, and make it very organized and, like, okay, check, check, check. I'm going through 1, 2, 3, 4. And then all of a sudden it's like 10 minutes of them sharing this whole thought that could have taken, like you just did, the 20 seconds.
Yeah.
To open the conversation, the facts, share the thoughts and feelings, and get to the want and have it just be a quick opener.
Yeah.
So I think the example that you shared, just like how it rolled off your tongue so quickly, like that puts all of this together in such a nice little package. And like, oh, like that's refreshing that it's so doable, right?
Yeah.
Like it's actually really not that complex
Yeah.
that we try to make it in our brains.
It doesn't need to be, and I've been doing this a long time, but it doesn't require a long time to figure this out. The first time is going to be longer and it's going to be clumsy like anything. But I've seen people pick this up and go real quick with it, learn about it real fast. It doesn't require that it's years of practice before you can have it roll off your tongue. It just doesn't. Yeah. And like you, Leah, I like frameworks, I like structuring, et cetera. So this actually knowing this, facts, thoughts, wants, feelings, it helps me kind of just have it in my bones now. What do I need to say that I haven't said? Boom, 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 boom. Got it. Here you go, other person. Yeah. Anything else before we move on? We've got like 20 or 15-ish minutes, so I'm kind of like pushing myself kind of quickly here, but any other reactions to this, observations, anything you want to share? Okay, by the way, you can all call or like happy to continue this conversation with anyone that's interested after this session if you want to dig into this. So now we're on condition number 3, create rituals and regular practice. There are lots of ways of doing this. I'm going to offer up 2 specific examples of things I use with my clients. One of them EOS uses quite a bit and recommends. Doesn't matter, as long as you're creating some regular time and moment once a week or something. It doesn't have to be 3 hours long, even in 15 minutes, just to get people more and more comfortable letting it out, letting themselves be seen. It just builds muscle memory, creates culture. And so here are the rituals or the practices I use all the time. So one of them is just a simple check-in where everyone goes around and they answer a particular question, and it could be any prompt or question. Now, what makes this work is one person is answering or sharing their update. No one else responds. No one else asks questions. No one else tries to save anyone else. We're just simply listening to the other person so they can feel heard, and we say, thank you for sharing. If we do that, we set up an environment where it feels safe to share. And so these are some prompts I use quite regularly. Like the simplest one is, if you were to really know me right now, you would know, and I'll set a stopwatch for 2 or 3 minutes and just have everyone just, whatever it is, we were to really know what's on your mind right now, what it's like being you right now, what would we know? Or you don't have much time, what are 3 words that describe you right now? And if you're really playing ball and having fun and you're really, you know, getting engaged and trusting one another, I love questions like, what I don't want to tell you is, everyone shares of that. And then you can really get into it and build trust. Anyway, again, 2 or 3 minutes, no one responds, comments, etc. Everyone just simply says thank you. Another thing I do around feedback, again, the reason we all say we love feedback and value feedback. The reason we don't give more of it is for everything we've already discussed: security, approval, control. It's too scary to give feedback. And so I love the feedback hot seat. I think EOS uses this quite a bit. There's a different name for it. I forget what it is, but once a month, every person has a chance to sit on the hot seat and simply listen to what everyone else has to share to them about them. So 2 prompts I like is, when everyone says to that person on the hot seat, one thing I've really appreciated about you lately is, and what I think you could be doing differently to be more successful is. It's beautiful seeing teams that are willing to do this. You know, if you really care about each other, like, I think the most caring thing we can do as humans is, you know, we're so scared of hurting feelings, so we don't share feedback. But in my mind, the most loving thing I can do is share something to someone that I believe will help them be more successful. Yet we don't do it because we're scared. So the receiver just simply says thank you. There's not a debate over this. The receiver just simply, and you know, to get the most out of an exercise like this, rather than debating the feedback, whether it's true or false, you simply walk away and explore, how might that be true? If you talk about it or think about it in that way, basically what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to be in this place of curiosity and learning. Any questions about these? There's lots of these. These are just 2 I use all the time, but you can always email. Got a ton of these things I can offer you, and it doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you're creating space for people to share. Okay.
I have a question on more the first one versus the second one, and I think the second one is because in EOS we only do this in one instance. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying my experience with it is we only ask the hot seat in context of a 2-day annual, so it's a very specific and safe environment that I'm creating to ask this question in.
Yep.
When it comes to the daily weekend check-in, one of the things that I wrestle with, and I'm in my own learning curve, is what are how do we set up safety parameters for it? And this goes back to how much is too much. Real example, and thank you, Robert, for sharing your example earlier, because you would have no way of knowing this. I have a client who lost her son, super tragic. And that's easily one of the most difficult things I've had to deal with, professionally speaking, and personally speaking too. But there's like variations of this, where someone is, maybe there's a domestic abuse situation, or we just don't know, right? And so when we're inviting open and honest, is there especially since this is a business context that this is being asked in versus a therapy context, from your experience as a coach, do you have any suggestions or recommendations about how we set this up, or what the parameters are, or if someone does share something that is in some identifiable way, even if it's just a gut check, like, oh, this requires like a very careful emergency-based follow-up right after. Do you have any experience share with that, or a way that you approach that from your experience?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this, the table has to be set by the leader at the top. What does it mean to work here? What does it mean to be on this team? And we're going to share unarguably, meaning we're just sharing what it's like being us, and nothing we're sharing is true or false. And we're going to create space for each of us to have reactions. Yeah, we make it triggered. So not only are we a team that values sharing what our experience is, and arguably we're also a team that can hold space for someone to have a reaction to something we say. And so I could talk about this at length around, there are specific conditions, there's ways of, if I'm meeting with a team for a day or something, there are ways to set up, there's something called designing a team alliance, which is like simply saying, what does success look like for us today? What do we need to do? How do we need to be together to ensure that we're achieving that? So we can preemptively talk about, if things get hot, if a conflict shows up, how do we want to handle that? There's ways in which to preemptively prime a team for a conversation like this. So that's my short answer, and I can go into some depth around that if you want to connect afterwards.
Yeah, I would love that, and thank you for that response. Like I'm glad I asked, because you along that this is I would love to have follow up on like that team alliance. Sounds powerful. I love that.
Yeah, happy to share that with you. Okay, so these are 2 rituals to practice, and now we need to hold folks accountable. And Patrick Lencioni, again, if you're into EOS, you know this guy. Everyone loves him, and he's brilliant. And one of the things he said in I saw a video on my YouTube, and I pulled this quote out, and I loved it. He said, if just one member of a team can't be vulnerable, it'll spread like a disease to the entire team. And I've seen it. And so one of the things I love about EOS is that teams are established around a set of core values. And Gino Wickman, the guy that wrote Traction, I love these 2 quotes. He says, it's important to note that whatever the core values are, they don't make the people who don't possess them right or wrong, nor do they make them good or bad. They just don't fit in your company culture. So true. Here's the kind of company I want to run as a visionary or an integrator or an owner or whatever it is. Here are core values. And we're going to have people that love those values and want to be a part of those values. And there may be someone that doesn't fit, and that's okay. So how do we help that person find another organization, another opportunity that fits better for who they are? They're not bad. They're just, we need to pick people that are right for our culture. And once they're defined, you must hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize people based on those values. This is kind of EOS 101. And EOS has developed all these great tools to support this idea. The people analyzer, basically, you're just giving everyone grades based on your core values. People aren't willing to play this game I'm talking about. That's okay, but maybe they're not right for your team. And there's all these other tools, 3 strike rules, and even outside of EOS, there's plenty of tools in which to help leaders keep their folks accountable. This can be scary. And a lot of us as business leaders, we feel really loyal. And so many of my clients, so many of our conversations are about having the courage to bounce someone out that's such a good contributor, such a good person, but they're not the right person for the right seat. It's really hard to do, or it can be really hard to do. But in fact, here's something that I help people realize. Human beings don't like to fail. We don't like to perform poorly. And so it's likely unfriendly to them to be in a role where their values don't match the values of the organization. So how can you create a win for all where you're helping everyone feel good about what they're doing? How do we help someone find another position or a different team within an organization that may have different values? I don't know. But that should be the goal. How do we find people homes? How do we ensure that the people that are in our home, in our organization, really want to be here because they jive with our values? It's such an important piece that can be tricky for leaders. I'm going to pause. Any questions about this? Beautiful. Generally what I do when no one says anything, I just know, I'm certain that everyone just loves everything I just said. That's my joke to myself. I told you I like to have fun on these things. Leslie, were you going to say something?
This was really helpful. I have to jump in a few minutes because I'm starting I have a client call at right at the half hour, but there's real takeaways here, and I will follow up with you on some of the stuff here, because it's so worthwhile going deep on this stuff. I'm so glad I showed up and thankful for you sharing with us today.
You're so welcome, Leslie. And before you go, scan that if you want the slides. I skipped ahead a little bit, but we just have a few minutes left. I want to share just a little bit about me and the company. And if this is interesting to you, here's what you can do. Leslie, I don't know if you've 2 minutes to do that or not. But here's the deal. I mean, you could probably tell I'm pretty passionate about this stuff. I love this work, and I established our company to help leaders embrace this stuff. 1560 was established to help business leaders and their teams wake up to their patterns. It's what I said at the very open of our session today. And so I kind of break this into two pieces. We help leaders and we help teams. We help leaders see how their organization's performance is a reflection of their own leadership. Like literally, our culture is a reflection of us. And so we also help leaders spend more time doing the work they're passionate about, less time managing. Learning to master delegation, having hard conversations, and radical candor, and to create the freedom and work-life balance that most business leaders ultimately got into business for themselves for in the first place. And we also work with teams, leadership teams, to break through the toxic victim mindset that we all get trapped in, to embrace open and honest culture, to end blaming, defensiveness, gossip, and checking out, which is so prevalent. And we learn how to make impeccable agreements and end unnecessary drama. These are some of the typical things we help teams with. And we do it 4 ways. One-on-one executive coaching, which you're probably all familiar with. Team coaching, which is working with the whole team, the whole leadership team, or whatever it might be, to help them see who are we as a team, what's in the way of us really, being successful individually and collectively. And Leslie, this may be interesting to you. I've developed this partner alignment program that I created based on some implementers reaching out to me multiple times saying, my visionary and integrator want to kill each other. Can you help me? And
Never
basically,
happens.
it's like marriage counseling, which it's really what it is. And so I have a program specifically for that, for the 2 leaders at the top. And it makes sense for the reason why there are 2 people. You need both sides of the brain. You need the visionary with explosive, big, tremendous ideas like a fire hose. And then you need someone that can land the plane. That's why you have 2. And based on those differences, if you're not dealing with the differences intentionally, sparks can fly. So I help those 2 really, coexist in really helpful, fun ways. And then lastly, we have these group coaching forums where I'll have like 10 leaders from various companies that come together once a month to practice these things together. So here's the thing again. I will say, I already have invited you to reach out. If you want to be challenged around any of these things, reach out anytime. I'm always happy to do an exploratory call. Let's just jump into some coaching for an hour. If it makes sense to work together, great. If it doesn't, I've just met a new friend and I was helpful in some way. But you can count on me to challenge you. That's what I love doing. So if you need someone to challenge you, or you're stuck and you want someone to give you a nudge, I'm happy to give you a nudge.
Well, thank you. Like Leslie said, so many great takeaways. So I know I'll have something we're going to jump to next. So before that, I encourage you all to do a couple of things. One is to write down one of your takeaways, right? Just one, just cement some of this in your head, because it's so powerful when we take a moment before we just jump to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Right. So taking that moment, taking a deep breath, and then like Clay said, reaching out to him, because this is incredibly supportive, particularly in the agency space, to have these open and honest conversations. And I'm just so thankful that you all joined today. It was a lot of fun. You got a lot of really great opportunities to dive deep, into this topic. So Clay, thank you so much for this. This was awesome. I know it's so valuable. And Leslie, Robert, Janessa, thank you for being here the whole time and being such great participants too.